All right. Hello, hello. My name is Sam Renaut. I'm with Sports Biz Camps. Today, we are bringing you episode 4 of 5 in our College and Career Insights month special event series. I'm thrilled to be joined today with several different sports industry professionals who are going to focus our conversation on those of you, particularly college students who have landed your first internships, and now you're hoping for some tips on how to stand out, how to make the most of it, how to do all the little things that are going to really put you in the best opportunity. Sorry about that. I'm technically inept, so I apologize for the noise coming in. So before we get started, I'd like to have everybody introduce yourselves. So I'm going to go around clockwise on my screen, and that starts with you, OG.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Oracio Galindo. I'm the head of human resources for the Los Angeles Rams, a native of Los Angeles, a alumnus of Loyola Marymount University. So if there are any Lions out there, hello. One of the questions I was asked in preparation for this was to talk a little bit about, what I thought I was going to do right out of college. When I went into college, I thought I was going to be an accounting major, and that quickly erased. After taking a couple of classes and working on worksheets and trying to balance things out, that was not for me. It was really an introductory HR class that got me intrigued into the world of HR. And 25 years later, I'm still in it. I love it. And I look forward to sharing, much of my knowledge with you today.
Looking forward to hearing it. Thank you. Lisa, you are next on my clock.
All right. Hello, everyone. Lisa Feigenblaum. I am the Vice President of Groups, Premium Hospitality, and Event Sales with the Sacramento Kings and Golden One Center. I'm originally an East Coast native, so from West Hartford, Connecticut, and I went to college right over the border there in Springfield, Massachusetts, and got my sports management degree. And now I'm sitting on the board and feel very old.
Very much, and welcome. Q, you're next.
All right. Good morning, Sam. Great to be here. Quashan Lockett, Q, as most people call me. I am the VP head of HR for Legends, based in Dallas, originally from the East Coast, originally from New Jersey. And I also am recently the founder of my own sports diversity inclusion agency called Color Sports, which I founded just 45 days ago, and trying to build that out as we speak. I am went to undergrad at Rutgers University, and talking about internships in schools. I guess I didn't necessarily know what I would be coming out of school. I didn't necessarily know if I would go to college. I grew up in really an underserved community. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and didn't know that I would actually go to college at one point in time. But blessed to have gone, and probably like most people, didn't know what HR was or what that path was. I did, talking about internships, I did an internship early on in school with Comcast, and it was supposed to be a just business operations internship. And I think the day after I started, the HR manager had resigned, and they said, "Hey, we got a bunch of HR work for you to do. Do you want to jump in and do it?" And I didn't know exactly what that was, but I raised my hand, and that kind of set me on a path. And 15, 16, 17 years later, here I am. So it's been a great path.
That's awesome. I'd be willing to bet, I won't speak for everybody, but of the 5 of us, I guarantee none of us took the exact path we expected to take the moment we set foot on our first college campus. So I'm excited to hear how that went for everyone. Ann, we'll wrap up with you and then get started.
Great. Hi, my name is Ann Seeney. I am the Vice President of Human Resources for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I have been in HR for a little over 20 years. I'm one of those folks who fell into HR. It was not my career path. It was not my choice. I needed a job after college. My major was mass media arts. I thought I was going to be this big PR agent, and fell into HR. So it's been great. And I'd always wanted to work in sports, never knew how. So I've been trying to mentor and give tips and things like that to college students, high school students, on how to get into the sports world, and look forward to sharing whatever I can.
I appreciate it. Just a reminder to all of our attendees, I put it in the chat, but feel free to ask questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. If you use the Q&A function in Zoom, that makes it easiest. And I'm going to come right back to you since you're here already. The first question was going to be, to describe your first internship and kind of talk about what were your expectations and what was it like? So you've already sort of begun to do that. So can you give us a little more detail on what it was like, how you got there?
It's funny because I was sitting here thinking, do you know, I don't think I ever had an internship. So, but I'm going to tell you how to get them, and they're important. But I think the one I may have had was really with my dad's company. It was a medical pharmaceutical type company, and I helped him with some PR type stuff going into like immediate, press kit and things like that when I was a junior in college, and which was still very, very beneficial and helped me learn a bunch. But I would say from an internship standpoint, I would say take them wherever you can. I would say it can all, you never know where internship will lead you. I had an opportunity while I was in school. I may not be the best to answer this question, but while I was in school, I had an opportunity with our sports information office where it was creating press releases, like a media kit and things like that for our golf team. And so I would say you'd always look for anywhere for an internship. I think sometimes we always think externally, it's always with big companies or things like that, but don't forget that you have opportunities within your university or within your school, because they have business operations as well. So I think we always have to think about sometimes where you are, as well as not always thinking big companies or big teams or things like that. There's also a lot of opportunity around you.
It's an interesting point you bring up. My first internship was actually in sports information as well, and I got an opportunity back. This was in 2004 when the Livestrong jelly bracelets were becoming so big. And at Virginia Tech, we were one of the first colleges to build something in that category. So we built these Hokies United jelly bracelets. And one of my jobs in SID was to help to write the press release announcing that. And it felt like a very tedious thing. Like they gave me all the details. I just crafted the phrasing a little bit. But I had the opportunity to interview the senior associate AD who was behind the idea. It was his sort of baby and brainchild. And that relationship actually led to a lot of really cool opportunities just because I had the opportunity to sit in his office for 15 minutes and make sure I'd written what he wanted it to say. So the little things like that can turn into very big opportunities, I think, if you're approaching them the right way. OG, how about you? What was your first sports job internship? How did you get your start?
I couldn't afford to do an unpaid internship. My family didn't have the resources to support me in the summer. So a lot of times I had to decline, internship offers that were made to me. It actually wasn't until my senior year that I was able to secure an actual paid internship. And it was working for a company called R.R. Donnelley. And I just looked them up last night in preparation for this and believe I was surprised to see they're still in existence. But at the time, they were a commercial printing company focused on printing Time and Life magazine, as well as the Yellow Pages, right? And if you think about, how times have changed, right? Probably today nobody knows what the Yellow Pages are, right? It's now Yelp, right? It was the print version of Yelp, 20 years ago. And as my internship, I was really responsible for supporting the director of HR with different tasks and different projects. And the one project I worked on was essentially a compliance audit that required me to look through 1,500 files. 1,500 files, right? And some days would be just sitting in a room, going through, making sure things that shouldn't belong in a file were not in a file. Stuck with it, was able to kind of complete it, earlier than I thought. Was always very curious to understand why it was important, right? Which I think is key to anybody who's in an internship. That it was important for me to understand the why, because it allowed me to really figure out how I could prevent this from happening ever again, right? To ensure someone didn't have to go through what I did, which basically audit, 1,500 files. And so I made a recommendation, to the director about how to fix the problems that I had actually discovered. And, at the time, my internship was only supposed to be for a semester long. She actually invited me to come back and not only implement the plan, but then also take on some additional projects. So, what I expected to be a semester-long internship turned out to be a year long, which then bridged me right into graduation, which was awesome.
That's a bold move on your part to come in and you're tasked with something as about the lowest ranking person in the building. And not only did you do it, but you identified problems they hadn't asked you to look for and were brave enough to present them, right? I mean, that's even a bigger step than you might have realized at the time.
And you know what's interesting, right? And for myself, right, coming from a non-traditional background, prior to joining the Rams, I never worked in sports, right? And so as I joined the Rams, some of the basic things I did when I was an intern, I sort of did again, right, as a more seasoned professional. And that was ask a lot of questions. Why do we do this? What's the reason for this? How long have we done this? Right? Have we thought about this? Right? And those types of questions allow you to discover, new solutions and reimagine new processes, right? And so don't ever be scared to ask those questions. They're very important. And someone who's new to an organization, and especially an intern who thinks, oh, I don't have any experience, I don't have a lot to offer. You do actually. You're looking through a lens, a blank lens, right? And so the input you provide is actually very, very powerful. So, and always remember that you may not have the experience, but your questions will certainly shed the light to something new.
Yeah, I love that. I think the old adage that there's no such thing as a stupid question has evolved a little bit, because now if it's easily Googleable, maybe it is a stupid question if you could have just figured it out yourself, but that's not always going to be the case with a lot of the stuff you're dealing with in an opportunity like that. Lisa, I'm going to come around to you. So in addition to what your first job was, I want to also touch on something that Oracio just brought up, which is your expectations going into it. So you took this first position. What did you expect your experience to be like?
So first, I had to do a 480-hour unpaid internship. And since y'all are HR folks, is that still legal? Does it depend on the state? We can offline on that, but this inquiring minds may want to know on this call though. So anyways, I was a marketing intern for what was the Hartford Civic Center, now the Excel Center. One of the most interesting things of my internship was it transitioned from MSG ownership over to AEG ownership. And there's many things that come with a change of leadership. And, here I am, a young intern, watching people pack up their desk candidly and leave. But I learned a lot through that process, and I'll kind of leave that high level. But my expectation going in, candidly, I wanted to get my internship done so I could graduate. Right? I had no idea that I was going to fall so in love with the sports and entertainment industry. And one of the purposes of an internship is to figure out what you want to do and candidly eliminate perhaps what you don't want to do. And in our industry, there's so many different fields and different departments within sports and entertainment. So one of the things I always suggest is go active and connect with those other departments, and don't think there's fun and sexy about that department. Figure out the hardest part of their job, the ugly, right? And is that something that you could come in and want to do? So while you're in there, take advantage of that. But for me, since we're all close friends here, I mean, I didn't have an amazing internship experience. I finally turned that corner when I realized, okay, this is what I do. I feel alive when I'm in sports and entertainment. And I looked around and realized there wasn't a heck of a lot of women in sports either. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. And so I changed my mindset from coming in and feeling like, okay, I'm just going to get through this, check my boxes, make some paper copies and update the website every day, to this is on me. I can make a lot more out of this. And when I flipped my mindset and really started connecting with other leaders in the company, developing those relationships, asking those questions, it really changed my experience at the end of it there. And I was able to get a sales coordinator position carved out for me. And I was with them and got promoted several times over 7 years. So I always wonder, had I not shifted my mindset, what would have happened, And so I'm so thankful that I did.
There's a big, I think, miss in a lot of young people now that they see, based on the way they've been brought up through their education systems, that doing an assignment is meant to check a box. You have to do this to get your grade. And that you need to shift that mentality, exactly what you're talking about, that doing the assignment's not just a, let me make sure you're paying attention kind of experience. It's a learn this because it's going to make you better down the road. And I can't tell you how many former students I've gotten that have said, 2 or 3 years later, they come back and say, I thought all that stuff you were making us do was kind of pointless, and now I'm doing it in my job. And I understand that, like, there was sort of a method to that madness. So I love that perspective, that you got to shift your mentality to realize that every moment, whether you love it, hate it, whatever it may be, is going to be a learning opportunity for you. You got your teachable moments everywhere. Q, I'm going to come finish with you. What were your expectations coming into that first job? I know you started that conversation already.
Yeah. So for me, it was, and I think a couple folks said this, I was looking for really two things going into my internship. One, I needed money. I was a financial aid student. So like, I was like, whatever I'm going to do, I need to get paid for it. And secondly, it was just like, what can I do to, continue to add to my resume while I was still in the school, knowing that, I'm just trying to get a job when I get out. And so going in, and I think similar to Oracio is, so I went in, was an intern for Comcast. I was expecting I was going to be on the business operations side. So I was going to be behind the scenes of the cable industry, essentially learning, what that is. I was going to be doing ride-alongs with technicians, kind of learning, that aspect of it. And, really day one, day two, it was like, hey, we need some HR help. I didn't know what that meant, but it was like, okay, sign me up. I'm here to do that. And the first thing that I was tasked with was, I think they had either had a recent I-9 audit or something was going on. So they said, hey, we've got thousands of I-9s that we need you to come in and take a look at. So I think it was a 1-day sort of deep dive into what an I-9 is and what you're looking for. I didn't even know what that was. And then they threw me a stack of files and said, hey, look for XYZ, make sure there's nothing off. And so I spent days upon days going through I-9s. And then from there, I remember it like it was yesterday. There was one afternoon, and I would spend my time in the lunchroom with just random employees, just kind of getting to meet people. And they were like, hey, you're the first person from HR that has ever had lunch with us. And I would, they would just talk to me about the culture and experience. And, that really kind of prompted my mind, like, hey, we should be doing more from an employee engagement standpoint. So I went back to my supervisor at that point and said, hey, what are we doing around employee retention and different things? And I didn't really know what that was, but I knew that I was hearing from the workforce that, things maybe weren't going as well as it should be from a people standpoint. So I started just kind of come up with ideas and talking to my supervisor about like, hey, can we put some plans together, and can I take the lead on putting an employee engagement program together, really focused on, the employees and doing different things. So really just kind of raising my hand and not taking what was just thrown at me and just sitting down doing I-9s all day, but saying, hey, I want to get involved in this. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I think I can, make a difference in that.
I think that's great. I think that all of you have mentioned something that demonstrates the importance of building enough of a relationship with your supervisor early on so that you feel comfortable kind of breaking out of your lane a little bit. I think that's an excellent way to look at this. We didn't prep on this, but one of our attendees just asked a very good question, and I wish they hadn't done it anonymously because I would give you some credit for it. This will be for anybody who wants to answer it. So the question is, how can students who've had their internships canceled this past summer due to COVID still leverage those opportunities? So they weren't able to come in person and do anything, but how can they meet the people of those organizations? How can they make the most of the fact that they were offered that job despite having it taken away from them? Anybody want to take a shot at that? I'm going to call on people. Go Socratic.
I'll try my hand at it. Or Q, do you want to go?
I was just going to say, whether it's sports or anything else, it's all people driven, right? So you've had an unfortunate situation where you had an internship and it got taken away during the pandemic. I would just say lean on whatever relationship you started to build with that supervisor or that HR person or whoever it was that you've connected with through the steps of actually getting the internship, and just lean on that and really start to have those conversations and get to know more about that person and try to leverage that to get introductions to other people, whether inside that organization or through their network to other organizations. And just really, you've got to grind and hustle and say, okay, I had an internship, I don't have it anymore. There's nothing really for me to do on that standpoint, but what you can do is start to build relationships and lean on that. And so that would be the first thing that I would be thinking about. How can I leverage that, learn more about that person, and get that person to introduce me to more people that I can get them to understand who I am personally and what I'm looking to do in the future.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would kind of say too. And then also, if you had to do this for school and had to get it for credit, checking back with your dean, your professor, to see if there's anything creative that they will accept for a credit, and then go back and do what Q pretty much just said, which is leverage those contacts of who you were talking to and try to see if they'll do something virtual, and say, like, if they, if it has to be something that you meet requirements for your school, what are those, and try and build that into something virtual where it's meeting with them, interviewing them, asking different people within the organization different questions, the things that you may have need to learn. So I think, again, it's doing those things and really leveraging that relationship, and probably, as we'll talk about later too, which is that's how you start your networking, and which is how you're going to kind of move up and get those jobs.
Right. If you had an intern in this situation and they had been especially enterprising and reached out and said, look, is there any kind of project I can still work on? Like, would you guys have taken the time, being impressed by the intern, to take that initiative? What kind of projects do you think you could come up with now? Like, let's say work is just gone, your sport is canceled. What types of things do you think an intern in that situation could actually do to show some value and demonstrate some capabilities?
Well, look, I think for all of us, we've had to really reimagine, what life is going to look like going forward. And, as it relates to sort of my experience here at the Rams, and especially my team, we were ready to go in March with a whole recruiting effort in terms of, 15 to 20 internships that we were going to hire for, several full-time positions, and those all came to a halt. Right. And so what it did allow for us as an HR team is to begin to focus on some things that we haven't had a chance to focus on because we've been so focused on recruiting, right? Dealing with engagement, right? More recently, we had to really focus on the civil unrest that was happening across the country and figuring out how to best support our employees, as they were trying to wrap their arms around, the issues that were happening, right? And so our focus became different, right? And so, I would say, just if somebody called me, right, I would welcome it, because I think it presents an opportunity to rethink, how we do the work, and I would be open to listening if they had, a recommendation that allowed me to consider, perhaps a virtual internship of some sort.
Great. And I'm going to assume that you chose your words specifically there, that if they call you. I think that's a lost art, to actually just pick up the phone and call. And it doesn't take much to stand out, not just sending a LinkedIn message, actually writing something more personalized, doing something that most students won't do because they're not accustomed to picking up the phone. Anything like that's going to help you to stand out. Lisa, I'm going to come back to you now. Have you you've been in the position to supervise, subordinate staff and some interns?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Thinking back, what is the most impressive thing you've seen an intern do, given the opportunity they had?
For me, it's don't just do the job or the task that you're asked to do. Go above and beyond, right? Try to anticipate a need that the supervisor is asking you to do a project and they don't even know. So, I have a bunch of examples, but the big things that stand out to me were when I've asked an intern to do something and they come back to me, walk me through it, and, oh, hey, by the way, I also added this layer onto it because I think this is a missed opportunity. And just to have the courage to, take that extra step and present that, to me is really how you stand out. But it's saying hi to me every morning, using my name, right? Making the eye contact. Those feel like such little things. But when I'm trying to learn the names of, 20 new interns, an inside sales class of 20 new people, I have to be honest, like, that is hard. But the ones that stand out, they give me a reason to remember their name, candidly. And there's a few different tactics, and we can touch on that a little later, but going above and beyond and those little things to develop those relationships.
Anybody else have a sort of memorable experience with an intern where they really went above and beyond and made an impact on you?
Yeah, I had an intern last year, actually, that didn't even report to me. Actually reported to someone on my team, and that person reached out to me very early on in an internship and said, "Hey, would love to just get a little bit of time every week with you just to kind of walk you through the things that I'm doing, understand what you're doing, understand maybe how I can help even beyond the scope of what I'm doing in my internship, and just learn more about you and the business. And that was just so authentic and so thoughtful. Like, I had never had anybody do that wasn't necessarily directly my intern, that was that I was supervising, but actually worked for someone else on the team and just took it upon themselves to reach out to me and ask of that, and had a very clear sort of plan for what they wanted to accomplish in those conversations. So not just saying, hey, can we have a conversation, without telling me what they want to kind of accomplish. And so that was something that was very thoughtful and authentic, that I was just kind of taken aback and impressed. And that was probably the best experience that I had with interaction with an intern that wasn't even necessarily my direct intern.
And they've got to walk a tightrope. I mean, that's a delicate balance of taking up too much of your time for something totally extracurricular, but still managing to add value to your experience and build that relationship. That's impressive. That's great.
It is. And the fact that it was so well thought out and planned, I would have given her, any time that she wanted, even if I didn't have it. Just the fact that she kind of built it out that way and was thoughtful about it and had a plan of what she wanted to accomplish.
That's human nature, right? You make time for the things that you enjoy. And so if somebody's coming to you with something that you're really excited about and impressed by, like, no matter how busy you are, it's all about how you prioritize those kinds of things. So for those of you who are interning, if not to make this denigrating at all, but if your bosses are avoiding you, it's probably because you're making a bigger burden on them as opposed to adding value. So make sure that they are actually taking the time to speak with you, because it means they care about what you're doing and they're impressed so far, and don't feel frustrated that you're not picking things up. We'll switch gears a tiny bit on this one. Anne, I know we talked about this yesterday on our pre-call. You've actually taken a much larger step than most organizations and tried to help to develop interns and job seekers and young people. So from the organization standpoint, what can you do to teach people how to stand out and how to come in with the right expectations? And if you want, feel free to plug what the Cardinals are doing, because I think it's awesome.
Thanks. I think it's anytime we work with students, and whether it's through internships or just any of the programs that we work with high school students or college students, it's to just kind of help get some of those, I say kind of sometimes the little things ready and in order. It's never too early to really learn how to network and build those relationships and talk to people. But also some of the things that we've done is we've had kind of, we call it Explore, which is a program we work with a local organization called Diversity Awareness Partnership, where we bring in high school students, grades 9 through 12, and so they can learn about the business. So they learn about the baseball operations side, and then they learn about the business side of things, and talk about the different jobs and opportunities. And I think sometimes we all think we always have to have a degree to have certain jobs and work in sports. And I think it's always trying to think about there's a wide range of positions that and work that you can do within any sport. And I think also we talk about like your resume and also leveraging the jobs that you do have. And I always think about, I may not have had internships, but I did have jobs that were kind of tailored to what I was looking to do. So I worked in college on the radio station. I was an on-air personality, so that I needed to work. So I worked. I got paid to do that. If it's something like I said, I worked as a customer service agent for Hertz Renter Car. Okay, but learning how to speak to people, how to manage problems and conflict resolution. Trying to teach students to use the jobs that they have, and take those nuggets that relate to maybe what's going on in the workplace, staying organized, using a calendar, some of those things that are kind of really basic that really have a huge impact, because we've had individuals come in and work and don't know how to use the calendar function in Outlook. They don't know how to schedule. And that is a real basic function that you really need to know how to do coming into a workplace. So it's some of those things that we try and kind of impart. We had a program called First Pitch that were used for college seniors or recent grads, where we put you through the ringer for about 4 days. You had a group project. We would tear up your resume, taught you how to network, all these different kinds of things, and then gave you kind of a feedback at the end with some of the executives here at the organization. So it's trying to kind of build some of those gaps and give people real instant feedback on where they can adjust, and then be able to really take that out and really start applying it in the real world.
What goes in, and if anybody can jump in on this one, what goes into this sort of onboarding process for interns? How much time do you all prepare to train them up before they actually set foot in the building and start working? Is there a formal process for that, or do you just kind of expect people to come in knowing how to get started? Oh, you got your mic, or Ann, go ahead, please.
Really quick with us, we have a typical onboarding process with pretty much anyone, where you meet with HR, you meet with IT, kind of all those things. You learn the policies, things you don't do and should do, and then we pass them off to their manager, their department, and then they kind of get in kind of indoctrination of what they're supposed to be doing. As a part of our onboarding, we typically also do like a tour of our facility, our stadium, as well as our museum. We do that in a way to help people get the Cardinals, understand our history, and kind of understand where we are and things like that. And then, of course, we try and give them some gear, when you get started. And then we do, when it's time to leave, we do an exit interview with the interns to understand what could have made their experience better. And right before COVID, we were really going to kick in a kind of program to help the interns. We started a little bit last year to help the interns get to know each other, because the feedback we got was that they don't know each other, even within the entire, during the season. We may have 30 interns and they don't know each other. So we've tried to put those kinds of things in place to help them get to know each other, and also do some resources like, understand the resume, how to interview, things like that.
It's a forgotten art of networking amongst your peers, especially students. You don't realize that the person sitting next to you in your economics class every day may end up becoming the CFO of a Fortune 500 company and can be the gatekeeper to your career as well. So I like that, making sure that your interns get to know one another, because some of them are certainly going to stand out and be rock stars, and people can kind of ride their coattails to some success on their own.
Yeah, I think, for me, very similar to what Ann said, it's all about the program and the experience. And look, I like to call things as I see it. So, just kind of putting some real world things out there at Legends. A few years back when I joined the organization, we were having managers who were, saying they were looking for interns, but there really was no sort of program behind it. I was like, you're really looking for cheap labor, and that's okay. We can figure out a different way to do that. But if we're going to do an intern, then let's talk about what that means and what the program is and what the experience is. Because if that is not part of it, then you're just looking for an extra pair of hands to get some work done, which understand that, but let's be intentional about what an internship program is. And exactly what Ann said, it's all about, the experience and what kind of goes into that.
It's a two-way street, right? Interns, it's not just for the candidate to be vetted. It's an opportunity for them to decide if the organization is a place they want to be. And you guys are, just as much as they're looking for their next opportunity, you guys are looking for the next great talent. So I think it's really important. I'm glad that you all are speaking on this. The opportunity to develop interns and create formal programs is something that I think is fairly not new to the sports industry, but it's really starting to come more into focus in the last 5 to 10 years, where internship programs are becoming much more sophisticated and much more formalized. Lisa, do you have something? You dropped your mute on.
Yeah, I'll just add, in our organization, after they go through, HR does an amazing job onboarding them and getting them caught up to speed. But I think the next important part of the transition is the specifics department and leaders that they are going to be working under, and making sure they have, so we have our own onboarding process. We give them the platform. We set up a meeting with all of the directors or managers that they'll be working with over the next few months. And we really intentionally ask them too, what do you want out of this internship? And just making sure it aligns with what our plan is. And a lot of times it's not, or they come up with a really good idea of something they could or should be doing to add value that we thought of in our one sheet. So anyways, I think that's an important step. And then we also have every month, meetings set up with them. How's it going? Is there anything measurable against what you're supposed to be doing? And it's hard to make the time to do that. Don't get me wrong. But that's just as important in the process as doing that with a sales rep or a manager or anyone else, right? So it makes them feel really valued and part of the program. So it's hard to get that buy-in though across the company sometimes.
Brings up a good question, and I'll pose this to everybody as well. Within your internship programs and within, as you're supervising staff and doing, I presume you all do at least something along the lines of an annual review for employees. What kind of metrics are you using to gauge the success of your young talent? Oh, can we start with you and put you on the spot?
Look, we have a set of core competencies that we expect of all of our employees, right, including our interns, right? And so things like, showing teamwork and collaboration, showing agility and flexibility, right, to also, understanding our market and how your role contributes to that. And so, we have the same expectations of them as well, right, of the interns, and that, for us to be successful as a brand, we all have to be kind of working towards the same common goals, same common behaviors. And so we look to provide feedback against those types of competencies.
You guys have any kind of metrics? Do you have a system in place for that?
We have a performance management process that we do. And so, the unfortunate part of most internships is that they're here for such a short period of time, so we can't formalize it, right, as part of our overall full-time process. But there is an informal, opportunity where supervisors are providing that feedback, especially as people are leaving the organization, so that they have a good understanding of what they learned and how to kind of move forward in their journey.
Anybody else have metrics they can share, something they can sort of shine some light on what interns can expect to be graded on?
For me and at Legends, very similar to Oracio, our performance management process, which is for all of our employees, but, trying to keep the interns as aligned with that as possible, given it is a short amount of time, but, making sure that they're embedded into our culture and our systems of how we identify talent and assess talent and performance and different things. One of the things that I find very important is, we always do a end of internship project, group project, where they get a chance to, build a business case or work on a project with within their managers and with their internship or intern peers who are part of the program with them. I always find that a good evaluation, just to see what they've learned during the process, how they're thinking critically, outside of what they learned and what they're bringing to the table, and how they're thinking about things differently, and being able to showcase that at the end of the internship in terms of that project. And it does great things for the organization just to get some additional ideas flowing, but also for the intern to be able to showcase what they learn and leave a lasting impact on the people that they came in interaction with during their time.
Great. I think you brought up another important point, that there is a human element to this that we keep talking about. Next question, Ann, I'm going to start with you. What have you seen? We'll flip this entirely. Huge pet peeves. What can an intern do to completely get themselves written out of the picture? And this will be a personal question for you, but then organization-wide, are there kind of standards that if somebody does X, they're out, there's no way anyone in the building is going to recommend them?
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure I could have a list. But oh man, I do have pet peeves. But I would say, I'll say, come in with humility. There's a balance between having initiative and finding the holes within things. But the humility aspect comes in to understand that you're there to learn as well. It's, come in, learn, ask questions, but, be careful of balancing coming in and telling us what to do. I've seen that as if they know better. Not to say that your ideas aren't great, but understand that we'll take your ideas, but doesn't mean we're going to act on them. So it's trying to have that kind of balance. For me, like kind of understanding the kind of culture, the environment from a dress code standpoint. that is a big pet peeve of mine, is the dress code. What you roll out of, your bed to go to class in isn't necessarily what you should be wearing to the office. So kind of take your cue either from, not only from your policies, if you had an onboarding with HR, but to me, it's also take your cue from the position that you want to eventually be in. So if you're wanting to be a VP, sometimes maybe look how, maybe they're dressing or how they're acting. Sometimes just kind of take some of your cues from there. Not exactly you have to be exact, but sometimes that's kind of those things that make you stand out. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, those are usually some of the things that I found the biggest, that if you are kind of don't listen, aren't a good communicator, that can really nix things for you very, very quickly. Where that'll help you get exited very quickly.
I always love, there's a comic that pops up from time to time on the dress for the job you want idea, where it shows somebody sitting in their cubicle dressed like an astronaut. I've always chuckled at that. Q, how about you? What's your biggest pet peeve?
Sorry, I was on mute. Like Ann, I probably have a few. And so time management is definitely one for me. And I'm not I'm a very laid back, relaxed person, but one of the things I learned very early on, and this wasn't even an internship, but it was my first entry level job, which was in sports. My boss told me, look, if everybody is in the office at 8:30, you better be here at 8. So it was saying, hey, you should be the very first person in here, and let that set the tone for your work ethic and how you go about things. So not going to that extent with my interns, but if I'm saying, hey, can we meet at 9? You should be there before 9, or there shouldn't be any excuse why you can't get there. I can remember back a couple years interns that we've had in Dallas, and I would do a lot of things around AT&T Stadium. And I said, hey, we've got a game today. It was a Sunday. My team's going to get here around this time. Let's meet before that. And I think the time was let's meet at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. I think the game was a 3:25 game, whatever it was. And just all sorts of excuses around that. So time management is definitely one. I think secondly, Legends, we've got about 20,000 employees. So I deal with a lot of employer relations things. So if you're coming with any kind of employee relations issue, that's just a no-no for me. Going back before COVID, we would do a New York internship program where we actually housed interns in New York City and provided housing. And I can remember there was an issue with housing with one of our interns out in New York. And it's so if you're bringing any element of an employee relations issue to the table, that's just not going to cut it for me.
A lot of talented people out there, and it's much easier to get yourself removed from the list than it is to get yourself moved to the top of it. I think I love the punctuality thing. I think punctuality is 100% a sign of respect for the other people that are in your life. And it also allows for mistakes to happen. If I came in, I don't have, for whatever reason, technology fails around me. I don't know if I emit radio waves, but computers always break, phones break, everything breaks around me. And so when I'm showing up at something like this, I got into this webinar 30 minutes early to make sure the YouTube Live would work and to make sure my camera was working. That way I wasn't showing disrespect to all the attendees and the panelists by not being prepared for when you guys got in here. So I love punctuality. I think that's a huge one. Lisa, how about you? What really grinds your gears with young people?
I'm going to start out making myself sound like a jerk, but I am so about punctuality that if I'm running a meeting and I haven't gotten a note from someone saying, hey, I'm going to be a couple minutes late, because if they walk in, I'll just tell them to leave. I swear, people love me. I'm a great person to work for and with, but there's some things, and I'm telling you, you do it once, they'll be on time, right? I mean, that kind of HR might be cringing that I do, but that's how that's how I learned, and that's how I'm gonna teach them. So, a couple things a few folks touched on, but drama, right? Young group of people, right? Hanging out outside of work. I understand if that's getting to me, that's a problem, right? So keep it classy, keep it together. I understand you're going to hang out outside of work, but leave that outside of work. And just remember, you're always representing the brand of the company in which you work for, right? Let that one sit again with you, because this day and age, between social media, going out to the bars, whenever those open up again, just really let that sink in. Body language, right? If you get to be a fly on the wall in a meeting and you're in the back corner on your cell phone or something, you'll probably also be told to get out, but don't hunch over and look bored. I don't care if it's the most boring thing you've heard all year. Look engaged, be up, never act like anything you do. I just can't tell you, and this goes to the humility, but I can't tell you how many times, like, hey, I need you to help mail, these 200 envelopes, right? I get it. That's not what you came to learn about and do your internship, but take it with a smile. Perhaps ask me what the campaign is so you can understand why you're doing it, but do not show any signs of this is beneath me, because it's not. We've all been there and we've all done that. Lastly, I would just say just overall awareness, right? I do think there's a fine line between being really proactive and perhaps asking some leadership for some time on their calendar, right? 15 minutes, 30. I once had an intern who asked me if an hour each week. Like, I don't even have an hour each week for my direct reports and their staff, right? So sometimes there's that fine line with really having some awareness. Be proactive, like get that face time, but just be thoughtful in how you do it and how you ask about it, because it can cross the line.
Time is so critical, especially now when we're all working such bizarre hours, and whether we're in the office or not, there's now an expectation that you're working no matter what. I think that's made it really challenging for everybody to manage and balance their time. What about you? Biggest pet peeve?
Yeah, I would just add, I agree with a lot of the examples that were given. A couple of years ago, we had 2 interns who actually fell asleep in a meeting, right? And, they were not with us after that, right? The other thing too I would add though is be accountable, right? We know that you're going to make mistakes, and we want you to make mistakes. That's part of the learning process. But we want you also to be accountable and don't hide it, right? If you did make a mistake, just say, hey, I screwed up. Here's what I've done to fix it. Or here's some suggestions in terms of how I can fix it. The other thing also that I would add is, if I give you an assignment, don't give me more work, all right? If I'm going to spend the time giving you the context of why, this project is important, think about it a little more, right? Before you come back, with the request. So an example would be, if I ask you for a report because I'm doing an analysis and I want to understand the breakdown of diversity amongst our organization. And if you just send me an Excel spreadsheet, that doesn't help me, right? But if you actually go and take a step further and do the breakdown of it, you're allowing me to then react to it, perhaps give you some suggestions. If you don't, then I'm doing the work for you, right? And that also is not helpful for me.
Adding work to your supervisors is not a good way to climb. I think that's a very, very well stated point. So make sure you think critically, make sure you're thinking outside the box and understanding why you're being given a task that you're being given. That can take you so far. So everybody listening, take note of that. Next question. We're wrapping up here. We've got about 12 minutes left. So to all of our attendees in here, please do ask questions if you have any. You've been quiet so far. What would it take for any of you, and Anne, I'm going to come back to you, to feel very comfortable putting your reputation on the line for a former employee? So to actually write a letter of recommendation, and maybe even beyond that, actually pick up the phone and call on somebody's behalf, because I think those are 2 very different things that you can do to benefit a young person who's been underneath you before. So first, to actually get a letter from you, and then second, for you to really go and try and kick down a door for somebody.
Well, I will say I'm usually very honest and very upfront, especially if you've worked for me, or even if you've tried to build that relationship with me, within the organization. And I do have a few that have, worked here, that were entry level, that kind of came to me on their own and started to try to build that relationship, wanted to understand what they could do better. They asked me about their resume. So all those different kinds of things, they built the relationship and rapport. And so for those individuals, I'm all for, I make phone calls, I keep in contact. So I think it's really, for me, it comes down to building that relationship, building that rapport. And especially if you've worked for me, it's me understanding and seeing your work product and your work ethic. because I'm not, just because you work for me doesn't mean I'm always going to be really quick to, send off a letter or even make a phone call. So I really have to see that initiative, that you understood, that you have some type of self-awareness, and that you really have an interest in what you're doing, and kind of like that pride in your work. So I think some of those things, especially I'm more likely to be able to, either send that email or just give you a letter or make phone calls on your behalf. But to me, it really comes down to the relationship and kind of what you did. Were you coachable? Did you take what I was telling you and actually apply it? So, those kinds of things are more likely to make me more willing to kind of do those things for you.
I think unless you're one of the very few people, at least of the people that I've supervised and students who I've taught and worked with, if you're one of the few that truly just stands out in every opportunity, and I don't really need to ask you any questions, I'm happy. I'm probably making calls on your behalf before you've even asked me to. But if you're sort of in that middle tier who I would recommend you, but I need a little bit more from you, I'll often give them a task, like a very minor task that says, look, I'm happy to write this letter, but first send me, a paragraph on this, or send me X, Y, and Z. And that way I know that they're truly serious about this. And if they get that turned around to me really quickly, that shows me that this is a real thing. And they're not just out there looking for free help, since they've, they're good, but they haven't stood out and shown me 100% all the time that they're going to be somebody that I feel very, very comfortable recommending. Q, how about you? What do you look for in recommending people?
Yeah, so for me, it's probably two tiers, right? So if you're a great, you were a great intern or a great employee, your work product was good, good work ethic. Like if you need me to, like I'll help you out any way I can. If you need me to write an email, or if you want to give somebody my name and, say, hey, this person's a reference, like that's fine. But in terms of me, like walking you through the door and like putting my name and my reputation on it, like you have to be, for me, it's about who you are as a person, like beyond what your performance was as an employee, beyond your work ethic. It's like, hey, do I have a good sense of who this person is as a human being and as a person, and what their integrity level is, and what they value, and who they are at their core as a person. And if I have a good sense of that, and I feel good about that, then, that's a situation where I'll walk you through the door and really put my name and reputation on the line for you. And that comes very, very few in between. There's not a lot of people that I'd probably do that for. There are some, but exactly who those people are.
It's not usually a secret who the true rock stars are, but it is definitely hard to get into that category. I've got a former faculty member of mine at the Arizona State program I used to be a part of, who's also one of the lead attorneys in Major League Baseball. He always talked about being in people's top three, where if somebody knows me and knows I've got access to young talent, they'll send me a job description, say, hey, I'm looking for this. Do you know anybody? I'm not going to send them 46 names. I'm going to send them 1, 2, maybe 3. So if you're not in that top 3 list of people who I'm comfortable recommending for that category, then our relationship's great. It's important, but it's not going to get you where you need to be. Lisa or Oracio, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, your reputation and brand is everything in this industry, right? So it can be tough, or even having that awkward conversation if someone isn't great and they ask you to be a reference, right? There's obviously some disconnect there, but for me, I think especially when you're an intern too, I call it the art of getting credit. Like if I'm 2 or 3 levels removed from you, the only way I'm knowing if you're really good at what you're doing is from your direct reports, right? And they'll talk, right, if you're good. But sometimes I think there's also things interns can do to manage up a little bit and celebrate some of their own success. An intern just start sending me a weekly recap. Did I read it every week? No. Did I start to figure out that this intern was proactive and doing a ton of stuff that I never would have otherwise known? Yeah. So I think without sounding, while still remaining humble, there's some key ways that you can sell yourself to the higher ups who ultimately have some more weight when some of these asks get made. For me, it's also really important to understand the role they're applying for. I can't tell you how many people come in and say, hey, can you send me for that? Well, like, what is it? Because I need to understand that I actually feel comfortable recommending you for that specific role. So, start with things like that. Start with getting your supervisor or whoever you're asking to recommend you enrolled in what the role is and believing that it makes sense, and then be really clear how they can help you. I also usually have people, I don't know if this is bad, but I usually have people kind of craft their own recommendation letter, and then I can tweak it. I mean, it's not a quick thing to do. I'll certainly change it if I don't agree with some of it. But to your point, Sam, or whoever mentioned having someone do a project, like, to me, that's their put it together. Let's see how this looks. And then I can tweak it to what I feel comfortable with putting my name on. But save me a lot of time and honestly kind of gauge to me if they were really ready for that position.
I want to come to you on this for the final answer on it. And then I want you all thinking, because this is tough. We just got one more audience question, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. It's either Kay or Kai Fleming. What is the biggest quality you look for in an intern? What can they demonstrate if you were to pick one thing most important to you? And we'll come back around and just go around the horn, one word answer for that. And then Lisa, to your point, I think when people ask for these sorts of things, if I'm applying, if I've got a student who's applying for a job, I want them to email me the link to the job posting, why they want it, attach their resume, attach their cover letter, like give me everything. So to O's point earlier, I don't have to go back and say, all right, I'm happy to help, but I need you to send me more, because that's just one more step. That's one more bit of time I've got to take to help you out. So, what about you?
If it's one word, flexibility. Being in sports, you have to be very flexible. It's constantly changing. What you set out to do on any given day may change as your day starts, right? So be very, very flexible and understanding.
That's great. And now I've got confirmation. It's Kai Fleming who asked the question. And what's your one word?
Oh, I think I'm going to go with a hyphenated one with self-awareness. I think I'm going to do that, just because I think a lot of times we're not always understanding of what we say, how we say it, how we're wired, all those kinds of things that kind of go with self-awareness, knowing your timing and when to say something, when not to, all those things that get wrapped up in that. I think that's a huge, if you want to call it a skill, that is, I think I look for and try and help develop for people.
I like that. Q, what about you? One word final.
I'm going to make this one word. It's not, but emotional intelligence. You just got to have, and I guess similar to what Ann said, you got to have the awareness of yourself and understand the situation and just emotional intelligence is what I'll say.
Lisa?
I'm going with attitude. Obviously a positive attitude, but attitude.
It's amazing how much more of an enjoyable experience it is to have interns who are positive and happy and showing a good attitude every day. When the people who complain, and especially now, I've seen this a lot, don't put things on your Instagram stories that are complaining about having to be at work. Your bosses are going to see those. Your coworkers are going to see those. That stuff gets around. So be careful with that. With our final 2 minutes, I just want to take the time to thank all of you. I also want to give a huge thank you to Laura Dixon and the Pro Sports Assembly for providing several of you. I know many of you are founding members and board members. Quashan, Oracio, Lisa, Ann, thank you all so much. Next week for our attendees, we have our final episode for our College and Career Insights month. This one is going to be I Just Graduated, Now What? So we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you all again. This was an incredible experience for me, especially I'm sure for the students. We know you all are very busy. So hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And then once again, thank you.